what contraction in GDP means is that if we were producing 100 bags of food last year, we will be producing 76 bags this year, which means 24 people are going to go hungry. So it's a very serious issue. A contraction doesn't mean a reduction in growth rate. It actually means that we are doing lesser than what we did last year. So that is one. The second major issue, the major problem when we see a contraction or even a reduction in growth is that there is a thumb rule in India. That is that if the GDP growth rate goes down by 1%, it translates into a 0.5% reduction in number of jobs. So you see what happens is that if growth is at 7% and now next year becomes 6%, we are still growing. See, 7% is 100 to 107. 6% means 100 is becoming 106. So that's good, isn't it? But because it has fallen from 7 to 6, we have lost 0.5% of jobs, which means we have lost nearly 8 million jobs. That is why it is a serious issue. That is why when the growth rate went down from 7.5% to 5% between 2015 and 2019, we all were very upset. When it contracts by 24%, I mean, it is beyond getting upset. It is beyond tragedy. That is the problem. So therefore, we will have 120 million people losing jobs because of this 24% drop.
You have written about democracy and digital.
Yeah.
Now, this debate is, of course, raging in America about postal ballots and whether they should change or not change, or what pandemic and going out means. What are the risks that digital voting, for instance, would be susceptible to? You've pointed out that some countries are already using digital voting without risks. I mean, there is obviously, I mean, we need to think about what, there are plenty of risks that are present even without our going to digital. But do you see, for India, do you think it is A, possible, B, advisable for us to move to some sort of digital voting? Especially, you've also mentioned the digital divide in terms of access. So do you think India or EC should be thinking about?
In these bleak times that we are living in, the one facet of India's politics that I am most proud of, and all of us are, is that come hell or high water over the last 70 years, unlike any other economy in the world, we have held our elections on time. Right? We've had great dictators, we've had emergencies, whatever, but we have been very, except Jammu and Kashmir and maybe that once in Assam. But otherwise, we've done elections on time, and except for the third tier, which we continuously ignore. But otherwise, at the parliament and state level, we've been pretty good. And therefore, I think that hallmark of democracy ought to continue. And therefore, when the EC or the Prime Minister decided to go ahead with elections in Bihar, I was, those rare moments when I tended to agree and wholeheartedly support that. It is important that we conduct elections in whatever manner possible. Now, given that we are all these digital warriors, we also know that it is perfectly possible to use high quality technology platforms that will allow us to hold free and fair elections. That there is enough on that, and people like Osama, etc., will know that. But using technology to hold fair elections is certainly possible, and much more possible than in the normal way where we have seen a lot of rigging, etc., go on. Notwithstanding the fact that there is an issue of access, especially in states like Bihar, where in the other part that I write on education, it becomes a serious bottleneck. But in holding an election over 3 days, I think using the kind of infrastructure we have and the reach that we have, it should be perfectly possible to go to every polling booth with a makeshift electronic and digital interface and allow everybody to cast their vote. I think that is something that we ought to be doing, that we must do despite all the problems that we are going to face. And when yesterday the dates came out, there were a few of us who were very, very happy with this development. So through the direct answer to your question, yes, the digital platform allows us to host elections even during these times. In fact, it allows us to hold elections in a far better, cleaner, and safer manner than it would in the traditional way of holding elections. You see, the tragedy is, and I call it a tragedy, Osama, when we start looking at ourselves and blaming ourselves, that it is we who are at fault, we have to look for what we have done wrong. What is a state for? Why do we have regulators? It is, the caprices of individuals have been there forever, and they are allowed to have them. You have a certain whim, it is your whim. But that whim, when it starts disturbing Dushyant, it is an institutional apparatus of the state that comes and stops us. And therefore, if we see this mess that gets created by one Ankhi Das at Facebook, that is not something that you blame me for. That I am going, it is not. It is I have not reacted to Facebook, and I have not, gone away from using Facebook, and I am using whatever language. No, it is the collapse of a state apparatus that has become compromised, that is unable to regulate simple corporate practices. We have the laws, we have a structure. If we don't have them, it takes, as the Prime Minister has shown, it takes half a day to make a new law for anything as basic as farming or labor or citizenship. So if we need a law, it takes us 6 hours to make a law. And if we don't do that, the fault is not mine. I am living my life honorably. I am a moral citizen. I pay my taxes. I work hard. Why should I face this guilt that it is because of me that WhatsApp and Facebook have taken over the world? No, it is because we have a rotten regulatory system that needs to be corrected. Where you don't find corporate sector or any of these tech sectors misusing their powers in most other countries where there is a rule of law, where there is a court system that actually punishes somebody for intruding into somebody else's property or privacy. We have that, and therefore the demand is not from ordinary citizens like you and me. My demand is from the institutional apparatus that is collapsed, the institutional apparatus that has to be ready to tackle new challenges that technology throws up. These are new challenges. And if Facebook is presenting or WhatsApp is using windows available to them, that is a rational use of making more money. They will do that. It is not individual people's fault, nor a large corporate sector's fault. It is the fault of a regulatory system. It is the fault of a political system. And we, at the Digital Empowerment Foundation, where we take up these issues, have the responsibility to highlight this and say that, look, this is how you can plug it using a good change in the legal system. Thanks, Tushar.
The only problem, Amir, in what you're saying is that you might end up being a China in the sense. I mean, early on they banned Google, they banned Facebook, and they have the Baidus, etc., etc. So, in a sense, if you look at WeChat and Baidu and everything else, I mean, they're very powerful forums, but very controlled state-owned enterprises, because it is very difficult for them to say anything against this party of China. So,
Ganesh, that's why I'm being very clear.
My only worry is that if you allow the institutions to take over free speech, then free speech itself becomes an oxymoron. That's my only worry.
Well, Ganesh, very well pointed out. I'm a fanatical Democrat, so there is no question of banning anything. Banning is what China does. We do that. We ban this book and that book and this slaughtering this and slaughtering that. That is a bad thing. Any ban is not allowed in a democracy. I am not talking of banning or institutional takeover at all. I am talking about a sound regulatory system that does not allow any abuse. That does not allow any abuse of any freedom that everybody has and protects individual and firm level freedom to the utmost. We need that. Otherwise, we already are a China. I mean, look at the number of things we ban. I mean, almost every day we ban. That seems to be the answer to everything. But that's never the answer. That is the problem.
Amir, how is your digital going to ensure that more politicians like Mrs. Dikshit are elected?
नहीं यार,
you know, there is no way in which we are going to have a Sheila Dikshit back. If you think you are a fan of Sheila Dikshit, you haven't met me yet. So,
I personally saw Delhi change.
yeah. No. I have various other reasons and some other panel we will dedicate to what Sheila Dikshit did to the country. The last conversation I had was when I told her that she had done more and ruled Delhi more than Aurangzeb did. So, see, I strongly believe that just as we have seen the misuse of technology in running elections and in running democratic spaces, I think we will see the use of technology to do the same. Because you see, after all, technology is just the tool, it is just the medium. To blame, we often make this mistake of blaming the messenger. As Osama rightly said, that you see, we start, we when we misuse technology, then we are the ones who have brought in a certain system. We are the ones who believe in that ideology. I think that if you look at it from a wider, broader, long-term perspective, there is this transformation that India is making from being a poor, underdeveloped economy to a middle-income economy. And in this kind of a dip and this kind of a shift towards right-wing fanaticism is not unnatural and is not unheard of. It is unfortunate that it happened to us because we were very sanguine in the belief that we are a very democratic, very secular country. But we went the way most other societies have gone, and I am sure that this phase will end very fast, and a lot of this ending and transformation will be predicated on the use of good, sound, very empowering technology.